Rain pattered softly against the windows of the downtown apartment, tracing silvery rivulets across the glass as if nature itself were hesitant to disturb the quiet tension simmering inside. Adrian stood by the kitchen counter, half leaning against the marble edge, fingers absent-mindedly circling the rim of his coffee cup. His eyes, dark and unreadable, stayed fixed on the figure sprawled carelessly across the couch.
Luca.
Even now, after 3 months of this strange, almost symbiotic arrangement, Adrian couldn't quite grasp how the 19-year-old had managed to upend the fragile balance he'd built around his life. It had started innocently, a chance encounter at the art gallery where Adrian curated exhibitions. Luca had wandered in, drenched from the rain, eyes too bold for someone so young. He claimed he was a painter. Adrian had been skeptical until he saw the sketches Luca carried in his worn backpack, raw, vivid, unapologetically intimate. There was something magnetic about Luca. He carried himself with the reckless abandon of someone who knew he could get away with anything. Adrian, despite his best efforts, was not immune. "You're staring again," Luca said without looking up. He stretched languidly, like a cat, shirt rising just enough to reveal the line of his waist. A smirk played at the edge of his lips. Adrian didn't respond immediately. He brought the cup to his lips, more to mask his thoughts than to drink. "You make it hard not to." "I try." Luca turned his gaze toward Adrian, green eyes sharp beneath the curtain of dark curls. "But you still haven't told me what you want from me." That was the heart of it, wasn't it? Adrian didn't know. What had begun as fascination had grown roots far deeper than he'd planned for. Luca was unpredictable, infuriatingly evasive one moment, achingly vulnerable the next. There were nights when Adrian swore he saw real fear in those eyes, pain masked behind flotation. And then there were moments like now, when Luca wielded his body like a weapon, drawing Adrian in only to push him away when he got too close. "I want you to take yourself seriously," Adrian said, stepping away from the counter. "You have talent. You waste it." Luca laughed, low and amused. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." Adrian felt heat rise to his face. "What are we doing, Luca?" Silence settled between them like a fog. Outside, the rain thickened, dulling the edges of the world. "I don't know," Luca said at last. "But it's the only thing that makes me feel anything right now." That confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. Adrian moved to sit across from him, elbows on knees, searching his face. "What happened to you?" Luca looked away. "You ask like it's one thing. Like I can sum it up in a sentence." "Try me." Luca's jaw tightened. He stood, crossed to the window, and pressed his forehead against the cold glass. His voice, when it came, was distant. "You ever feel like your body doesn't belong to you? Like people see you and decide who you're supposed to be before you even speak?" Adrian nodded slowly. "More than you know." They stood in parallel silence, two broken lines trying to run alongside each other, without intersecting. When Luca turned back, something in his expression had shifted. Walls lowered, just enough. "I'm tired of pretending I'm fine," he said. "And with you, I don't have to. But it scares me." Adrian rose and approached, his hand hesitating before resting lightly on Luca's shoulder. "Me too." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither needed to speak. Whatever lay between them was complicated, undefined, and dangerous. But it was real. And in a world that felt increasingly hollow, that was enough for now. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, and the city lights flickered like hesitant stars. Adrian hadn't intended to see Luca windows of the downtown apartment. The conversation had stripped silvery rivulets across the glass, and the vulnerability nature itself him more than he'd anticipated. The quiet tension he'd spent the next few days buried in work. Adrian stood avoiding the gallery's back room, half leaning against the marble edge, fingers absent-mindedly circling the rim of his coffee cup. He didn't demand space. His eyes, dark and unreadable, folding himself into Adrian's gaze like a shadow cast across the something burning just out of sight. Even now, it was Friday evening when Luca showed up unannounced, his hoodie almost symbiotic arrangement, sketchbook clutched Adrian to his chest. Couldn't quite grasp Adrian how the opened the door reluctantly, had managed to caught between the fragile balance he'd built around his life. Felt too close it had started innocently. "I brought something," a chance encounter Luca at the art gallery where Adrian curated exhibitions. For once. Luca had wandered in, invited in, drenched from the rain. He moved past Adrian, eyes too bold, and placed the sketchbook on the coffee table like he claimed he was a painter. Adrian had been skeptical. Adrian hesitated before Luca carried in his worn backpack. Luca's wet footprints trailed behind him, vivid, fading unapologetically into the wood floor. There was something magnetic about Luca. Through the pages. He carried himself with the reckless abandon of someone who knew he could get away with a fragment of emotion, Adrian, of memory, despite his best efforts, human form, was not immune. A face, you're staring into a pillow. Luca said without looking up. He figure seated in silence, like a cat, eyes hollowed, shirt rising just enough to reveal the line of his waist. Adrian murmured. A smirk played at the edge of his lips. They're pieces Adrian
of you.
Didn't respond
Luca
immediately.
didn't look at him.
He brought the cup to his lips.
I never let anyone
mask his thoughts than
except
to drink.
Now.
You make it hard
there
not
it was
to.
Again.
I
that
tried.
Disarming honesty.
Luca turned his gaze toward Adrian. Adrian
green
sat
eyes
beside
sharp
him,
beneath the curtain.
Careful not to let his own hand brush.
But you still haven't told me what you want from me.
Why now?
That was the heart of it.
Because I thought you'd understand.
Adrian didn't know.
Luca said.
What had begun
because
part of me hoped
had
you'd
grown
still
roots
care,
far deeper
even after I
walked
out
on
you.
Luca
never
was
stopped
unpredictable.
Adrian
infuriatingly
admitted
evasive.
I
One
just
moment,
didn't know how to help without
achingly
making
vulnerable
it worse.
the next.
There were nights
silence
when Adrian
between
swore
them,
he saw real
punctuated
fear in those
only
eyes,
by the soft ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of rain.
And then there were
against
moments
the
like
roof.
now,
Luca
when
turned a
wielded
page,
his body like
revealing
a
a self-portrait,
drawing Adrian
in
and only
figure,
to push him
nude,
away when he got too
sitting
close.
on the edge of a bed.
I want you to take yourself seriously.
One hand
Adrian
pressed
said,
against his chest,
stepping away
as if
from
trying
the
to
counter.
hold something.
You have
inside.
talent.
That
You
night,
wasted.
when I said I didn't know
Luca
what we
laughed.
were doing,
Low
Luca began,
and
voice
amused.
strained.
That's
It
not
wasn't
what
a
I
lie,
meant, and you
but
know
it was also
Adrian
a defense.
felt heat rise.
You make me
to
feel
his
like
face.
I could be
What are we
something
doing,
more,
Luca?
Adrian. Silence
And that
settled
terrifies
between them,
me.
like a fog.
Adrian
exhaled
outside,
slowly.
The rain thickened,
absorbing the weight
dulling
of
the
those
edges
words.
of the world.
He glanced at
I
the
don't
sketchbook
know,
again.
Luca said
then
at
at Luca's
last.
face.
But it's the
Pale
only
under
thing
the
that
overhead
makes me
light.
feel anything
Eyes
right
rimmed
now.
with fatigue.
That confession
something
hung
close
in the
to
air.
hope. Heavy
You already
and raw.
are something more.
Adrian moved
Adrian
to sit
said,
across from him.
But I'm not going to be
Elbows
the
on
one
knees,
to define you.
searching his
You
face.
have to want that for yourself.
What happened to you?
Luca
looked
bitterly.
away.
You
asked
sound like
it's
someone
one
who's
thing.
been through this.
Like I can sum it up
I
in a
have.
sentence.
Try
Adrian
me.
stood, walking
Luca's
toward
jaw
the kitchen.
tightened. You're
He
not the
stood,
first broken
crossed
soul
to the
I've
window
tried to rescue,
and
Luca.
pressed his forehead
But you're the
against
first
the
who
cold
made me
glass.
want to be rescued
His
in
voice,
return.
when it came,
Luca
was
blinked
distant,
at him,
thrown.
You ever feel
What
like
do you
your
mean?
body doesn't belong to you?
I mean, this isn't just
like
about
people
you.
see you and
You think
decide
you're the
who you're
only
supposed
one
to be
scared.
before you even
Adrian
speak.
turned,
Adrian
leaning
nodded
against the
slowly.
doorway.
More
I've
than
spent
you know.
years building a life
They stood
where
in
I don't
parallel
need
silence.
anyone.
Then
Two
you show
broken
up,
lines
all
trying to
fire
run
and
alongside
pain
each
and
other
beauty,
without
and now I'm
intersecting.
terrified of
When
losing
Luca
something
turned back,
I didn't even
something
know I
in his
wanted.
expression had shifted.
The room felt suddenly
Walls
too
lowered.
small,
Just
the
enough.
air thick with
I'm tired of
unsaid
pretending
truths.
I'm fine, he
Luca
said.
rose and moved
And
toward
with you,
Adrian. I don't have
Each
to.
step tentative,
but it scares
he
me.
stopped a foot away.
Adrian
close
rose
enough
and
for
approached,
Adrian to feel
his
the
hand
heat of his
hesitating
skin.
before
I don't want to
resting
hurt
lightly
you,
on Luca's
Luca
shoulder.
said.
Voice
Me too.
barely above a
Their
whisper.
eyes met,
But
and
I don't
for
know
a
how
moment,
not to.
neither
Then don't
needed to
promise
speak.
anything.
Whatever lay
Adrian
between them
replied.
was
Just
complicated,
stay.
undefined,
Let's
and
start with
dangerous.
But
Luca's
Luca's
breath
real.
hitched,
And
and
for the
in a
first
world
time
that felt
since they'd
increasingly
met,
hollow,
he looked
that was
fragile.
enough for now.
Not in the way of someone
Outside,
pretending to be
thunder
delicate,
rolled in the distance,
but truly
and the
vulnerable.
city lights
Flickered
flickered
like
like
hesitant
and
stars.
performance.
He nodded.
Adrian reached out and gently took Luca's hand. No games. No performance. Just presence. In the quiet that followed, something shifted, an unspoken agreement, a step forward into unfamiliar terrain. They stood like that for a long while, not lovers, not quite friends, but something heavier and unnamed. Outside, the storm passed, leaving the world rinsed and still. Inside, the silence between them began to feel less like absence and more like possibility.
Luca
Adrian
hadn't
leaned
intended
softly
to see
against
Luca
the windows
again
after
after
the
the
lingered
downtown
in Adrian's
apartment.
conversation had
Tracing
as
still
if
waiting
waiting
for
for
someone to tell
him
him
the vulnerability
and
nature
settled
itself
him
but
more than
Adrian
he'd
didn't send him
disturbed
away.
the quiet
He'd
tension
spent the next
simmering
few days
inside.
he made coffee while
Luca
Adrian
wanted
stood
avoiding
barefoot
the
in
gallery's
his
back
living
room,
half
where
leaning
Luca's
against the
tracing
marble
spines
edge
of old
but
books
Luca
and
was
springs
persistent
photographs
in his own
in the
quiet
quiet
way.
of a life
He
Adrian
didn't demand his
rarely
eyes.
spoke about.
Dark
Dark
and
and
silence
unreadable.
between them had
Holding
grown
himself
thicker.
fixed on the
Adrian's
figure's
no longer
gaze,
weighed
shadow
down
past
by
fear,
fear, but
something
shaded
burning
with
with
tentative
tentative
curiosity.
Even now,
It was Friday
Luca
evening.
sat in the
Luca
small
showed up
kitchen
unannounced.
unannounced,
His
hoodie
almost
still
symbiotic
and
arrangement.
sketchbook gliding
Adrian
across the
couldn't
page
quite
with
grasp
a
why
Adrian
an
opened the door
focused
had
never
never
seen
seen
before.
caught
And the
between
fragile
there was a
balance
calmness
he'd
to
built
him,
around
something
his
that
life.
felt
Uneasy.
too close
It
to
had
the
started
real.
innocently.
I
You
brought
don't talk
some
about
chance
your past,
encounters
Luca
at the
said.
art gallery
Luca
there
said,
without
slow,
being curated
not
excerpt
even
for
when I
once.
pushed.
Luca
He
had
didn't
wandered
wait.
in,
Adrian
invited in,
leaned
drenched
against
from
the
the
rain,
moved past
coffee
Adrian's
in
hand,
hand,
and placed the
because
on the
I'm not
coffee
sure which
table,
version
like
of it
it was
claimed he was a
something
painter.
sacred.
Try me.
Adrian had been skeptical
Adrian
until he saw
hesitated.
the
It wasn't that he didn't trust
buried
Luca.
in
Luca's
worn
what it was that
footprints
he'd learned
drawn
behind him
could
could
be
be
used like
fading
unapologetically
unapologetically spent too
more.
freely.
There was something
and
magnetic
Luca
about
flipped through the
Luca,
pages.
but something
He
in
carried
Luca's
himself
tone
with
was
a
demanding.
reckless abandon.
It was an
someone
invitation.
Who could
Each
get
one
away
was in
with
love
fragment
once,
of
he
emotion.
said,
Adrian,
of memory,
with someone
despite
who
his
used my
gentleness
human
as
form,
not
proof,
immune.
a
I
face,
was weak,
you're
crying
staring
into
into
a
I built a
pillow.
life with
Luca
him.
said
Clutching
without
at
watched
sheets.
it fall apart
His
one
figure
lie at a
seated
time.
in silence.
I
Like a
stayed
cat,
too
eyes
long.
hollowed,
Shirt
I
rising
blamed
just enough
myself.
to reveal
These
the
are
line
yours.
of his waist.
Finally
Adrian
looked up.
murmured,
A smirk
"You
played
still
at
do."
the edge of his
Adrian
lips.
met
Their
his gaze.
pieces Adrian didn't
surprised
respond
by
by
the
didn't
clarity
look
in
at
it.
him. He brought the
Maybe
cup
I
to his
did.
lips.
I
never
let
let
him
it
made me
me
careful,
and
except
drink.
now.
I don't let people
You make
in
it
a
hard
mess
not to
I know
again.
they'll stay.
I
That
tried.
disarming
Luca's voice
honesty.
softened.
Luca turned his
Spoken
gaze
without
toward
armor.
Adrian.
Adrian
Green
sat
eyes
beside
you don't know
beneath
what
the
you want yet.
curtain.
Careful not to let his
Luca
closed
owned
a
hand
sketch, but you
brush
still
against
haven't told
his
me what you want
pencil
from me.
beside
Why
it.
now? That was
Maybe
the
not,
heart
because
of it.
I thought
Wasn't
you'd
it? know what I
understand.
don't
Adrian
want.
didn't know.
Luca said.
I don't want
What
to
had
keep
begun
hearing
because
to people
fascination
just
had
feel
grown
so
roots
care.
far deeper.
Adrian
Even
felt
after I
those
walked out
words
on
like a
you.
bruise.
I never
Luca
stopped
caring.
caring.
The surface.
Adrian
Infuriating
admitted across the room
invasive
and
I just
across
didn't
from
know
him.
how to help
Achingly
without being
vulnerable
vulnerable
the
the
next.
next. Stay visible.
There were
Long
nights
silence
where
settled
Adrian
between
swore
them.
he
Luca
saw
nodded
punctuated
slowly
only by the
there was
soft
something
tang
new
of
in wall
anticipation
and the
and
distant
resolve.
hum of
And then there were
radiating
moments
against
like
the beginning
now,
of it.
when
Luca
Luca
turned
wielded
away
his
his body
body,
like
revealing
a weapon.
what if I let myself
drawing
believe
Adrian
in
I
figure
didn't
push him
knew
away
than
when
what
he
I
got too
sitting on the
close.
edge of a bed.
Then
I
I'll
wanted to
be
take
here.
yourself seriously.
Adrian said.
One hand
Adrian
pressed
said.
to remind you
stepping
when
away
you
from the
trying
counter.
the words
Some
weren't
to have
talent.
talent.
That
They were
night, when I said I didn't
The
know
days
what
that
that
followed
followed
took on a
low,
rhythm
neither of
neither
them expected.
That's
It
not
wasn't
what I
began
meant.
coming to
And
the
you
gallery.
know,
It was also
sometimes
Adrian
helping
felt
with
installation.
installation.
You make me feel like
sometimes
I
just sitting
could
in
be
the
what are we
corner,
doing,
more
Luca?
sketching in silence,
And that
settled
terrified
Adrian
me
gave
like
him
a
space
fog.
without
Adrian
question.
outside, though he noticed
the rain
subtle
thickened,
absorbing the weight
dulling
of
the
those
edges
words
of
of
the
the
world.
world. He glanced
I
at
don't
the
know,
sketchbook
again,
again, loud
Luca
noises.
said.
Luca's face.
How he
But
looked
it's
people
the
in the
pale
eyes
under the
that made
overhead
him
feel anything
But
right
it wasn't
now.
all
Fatigue.
quiet
That
progress.
confession
And something
hung
hung
in
in
the
the
air.
air.
Luca
Heavy
didn't
you
show
already
raw.
are something
No
more.
Adrian
calm.
moved
Adrian
to
said
no
across
message,
from him.
but I'm not
Adrian
going to be the
tried
one
not
to
to let it
define you.
consume
Searching
him.
his
You
face.
have to
But
want
the
that for
hours
yourself.
what happened to
dragged
you?
like anchors.
Luca
Luca
looked
away.
by midnight.
You
sound
sound
like
like
one
someone who's
thing.
been through
He found
this.
Luca
Like I
sitting
can
on the
sum it up
steps outside
outside
his
his
apartment
building.
Adrian stood,
hoodie drawn over
Luca's
his head,
jaw
the kitchen.
tightened, hands
You're
shaking
not
around
the
the
first
cigarette
broken
crossed
soul
the
I
window,
tried to rescue
and
you.
pressed his forehead
Adrian
against
first
the
who
cold
made me
crouching
want to be
beside
rescued
his
in
voice.
return.
Luca
When
didn't
it came
answer
to
immediately.
to him, thrown.
His
You
eyes
feel
were
like
red.
your body doesn't
Whether
belong
I
to
mean,
you.
this
Crying
isn't
or
just
like
people
people
see you and
you
decide
think
who you're
only
supposed
I
to
went
be
to see
there.
my father.
Adrian turned,
Adrian
leaning
nodded
against the doorway.
Why?
I've
More than
spent
you know.
years
Because
building a
part of
life
me stood
where
in
I
may
don't
parallel
need
to
anyone.
anyone.
Then
Luca
we showed
broke
up
lines
all
trying to
fire
run
and
alongside
passion
each
and
other.
beauty.
He
Without
told me
now
I
I'm
was a
terrified
mistake
of when
losing
Luca
something
turned back.
big.
I didn't even
Something
know I
no
was
real
expression
man lives
had
off
shifted.
art.
The room felt
And
suddenly
other men
too
take care of
small.
him.
Just
The
enough.
air
Adrian
thick
sat
like
tired
beside
of pretending I'm
hers.
fine.
You're not
Luca
a
rose
mistake.
and
And
moved toward
you
Adrian.
don't know what it's like
I
to
don't
believe
have to
someone
step 10
because they
steps.
said it
Scared, he
enough
stopped a
times.
foot away.
Adrian
I
close
don't
enough
and
for
approached
Adrian to feel
his
the
hand
heat of his foot.
hesitating
I know what
before
it's I don't want to
resting
hurt you.
all out of that
On
belief.
Luca said.
Me
Voice
too.
leaned his
Barely
head
above
against
their eyes
Adrian's
met,
shoulder.
but I don't
And
know
for
how
a
not
long
to.
time,
Neither
then don't
needed
just
promise
sat like
anything.
that.
Whatever
The
lay
scene around
between
them
them
moving too
complicated
fast
to notice them
until
tonight. Let's
and
start
dangerous.
last.
Luca
But
said
it was
real.
real.
And
for
in
the
a
first
world
time
that felt
since they'd I don't want to.
hollow,
He looked
Adrian
fragile
replied.
for now.
And
in the way
I
outside,
won't
pretending
unless
to be
thunder
delicate,
rolled in the distance.
but Luca
truly
said
vulnerable.
city lights
But his
flickered,
hand
string
found
and
stars.
performance. Fingers
He
curling
nodded
tightly.
Adrian
In
reached
that
out
silence,
and gently
Adrian
took Luca's
understood
hand.
that healing
No
wasn't
games.
going to be linear.
No performance.
There would be relapses,
Just presence.
backslides.
In the quiet that that
Days
followed,
when the weight would
something
crush the
shifted,
progress they'd
an
fought
unspoken
for.
agreement.
But there would
A
also
step
be mornings
forward
like the
into
last
unfamiliar
one,
terrain.
when Luca's eyes
They
had
stood
held
like that
something
for a
more
long
than
while.
survival.
Not lovers,
There was still
not quite
conflict
friends,
ahead,
but
within
something
Luca
heavier
between
and
them,
unnamed.
and from the outside
world,
the
that
storm
neither of
passed,
them could control,
leaving the world
but for
rinsed
now,
and
they had
still.
a shared truth.
Inside,
They were both
the silence
choosing
between
to
them
stay.
began to
And
feel less like
sometimes
absence
that was the
and
most
more like
radical act of
possibility.
all. The gallery was unusually quiet that afternoon, the kind of stillness that pressed into the walls and hovered in the air. Lucas stood near the center of the exhibit, staring at a large canvas that wasn't his, an abstract burst of color and motion, but he wasn't really seeing it. His thoughts were elsewhere, tangled around the conversation he'd been avoiding for weeks. Adrian had given him space after that night on the steps, just as he always did. No pressure, no guilt. But the more Lucas settled into the comfort of Adrian's presence, the more his fear sharpened. It wasn't fear of Adrian. It was the fear of being known completely and not being enough. He heard Adrian's footsteps before he saw him, soft and steady across the hardwood floor. Luca didn't turn around. "I didn't know you'd be here today," Adrian said gently, stopping beside him. "I wasn't going to be, but I needed to get out of my head." Adrian nodded. Sometimes art does that. Sometimes it makes it worse. A long pause settled between them. Luca finally looked at him. I need to tell you something. Adrian's eyes were calm, but alert. Okay. Luca shifted his weight, chewing at the edge of his thumbnail before dropping his hand. When I said I didn't know what I wanted, that wasn't entirely true. I knew. I've known. I just didn't think I deserved it. Adrian waited, patient. I want to be with you, Luca said. But I want it to mean something, not just escape, not just comfort. I want to build something real. I just don't know how. I've never seen it done right. Adrian exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing. You think I have? Luca tilted his head, surprised. Haven't you?
No.
I've only learned how to stop running when something good finally shows up. That's all I've got. Luca let out a breath that was almost a laugh. That's something. Adrian took a step closer, hands in his pockets. You don't have to know how to do this. We just have to keep showing up. Together. I'm scared, Luca said. Me too. The honesty between them wasn't a dramatic revelation. It was quiet, but heavy with intent. For so long, Luca had believed relationships were things that demanded performance, submission, or silence. But here, standing beside Adrian, the weight of those assumptions began to loosen. Adrian wasn't asking him to be anything except present. Luca reached for his sketchbook, tucked under his arm. He opened it to a page he'd hesitated to show anyone, a drawing of two figures seated side by side on a low rooftop, heads leaned together, not touching but close. Their features weren't clear, but the posture, the intimacy, was unmistakable. I drew this after the night at your apartment, Luca said. It's the first thing I've made that wasn't about pain. Adrian looked at it for a long time before speaking. Then, that's where we start. Luca nodded, but his expression was uncertain. What if I mess it up? You will, Adrian said without hesitation. So will I. That's part of it. The simplicity of the response struck Luca harder than any promise. There was no illusion here, no grand fantasy of perfect love or effortless connection. Just the truth. It would be hard, and it would be worth it if they let it be. The gallery lights flickered gently above them, catching the soft graphite on the page. Around them, the exhibit continued its silent testimony to 1,000 different expressions of vulnerability. Luca closed the sketchbook, tucked it under his arm again, and turned fully toward Adrian. I don't want to keep waiting for the moment everything feels safe, he said. Maybe it never will. But I'd rather risk something real than stay numb. Adrian smiled, faint but certain. Then let's not waste time pretending we don't already care. The words didn't solve everything. They didn't erase Luca's past or guarantee a future. But they were honest, and they were mutual. As they left the gallery together, the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the floor, warm and golden. For the first time in a long while, Luca didn't feel like a visitor in someone else's life. He felt like he was building his own. And Adrian, walking beside him, didn't look back. He didn't need to.